Many West Ham fans will look at this January transfer window that's just passed and for the second year in a row, will question whether it's been another wasted opportunity to push on and improve our squad. Last season, the pushing on was focused around trying to reach the Champions League, either through our league position or by winning the Europa League. This season, it's all about pushing on away from the relegation zone and winning the Europa Conference League. The last thing that fans will want to hear at the end of this season is that we just didn't have enough in our squad in order to achieve what we aim to achieve, our targets. It was an excuse that was used last season when David Moyes decided that there were no players available in the January transfer window last year that were better to what we had in the squad. So let's remind ourselves of what the squad consisted of this time last year. We had players like Issa Diop, who Moyes didn't trust. We had injuries to Kurt Zuma and Angelo Ogbonna. We had the hapless Arthur Masuaku. We had Ryan Fredericks, who was forever injured. We had Alex Kral, another player that Moyes didn't trust. And not to mention, we had Antonio, who was the only striker choice in the squad at that time. A makeshift striker at that as well. Had Moyes just brought in one player, in the midfield, in defense, in attack, whatever, just one fresh face in almost any position, it could have made quite a difference to the season in terms of our league position or in terms of winning the Europa League. The other factor in not adding to the squad in January was that it made it harder to recruit players in the summer. We were aware that we were losing a large number of players because of their contracts ending. And Moyes was already having to balance bringing in younger players in order to reduce the average age of the squad down. Even one or two players brought in last January would have helped, so that when the summer window was open, he wouldn't have had to bring in 8 players all in one go. He could have brought in a fewer than that if he had brought in a player or two last January. Fast forward to this season, and we have had movement, but we've seen more players leave for West Ham United than we have coming in. We know that Craig Dawson, who ideally wanted to leave in this summer window, finally got his move back up north and went to Wolves. Darren Randolph moved on to Bournemouth, but it's not like he was going to get much game time. But at least we got Joseph Anang back from the development squad, actually back from Derby County, where he was on loan to. We got him back in order to become the third choice keeper at West Ham. Of course, Connor Coventry, we know he's just been loaned back out again to Championship team Rotherham. And this is a good test for him. Rotherham aren't doing that well in the Championship. And if he does well, if he plays a good game for the next 6 months, he could come back. We've extended his contract for another season. He could come back to West Ham United at the beginning of next season and stake a claim in the first team or in the first team squad. I know he's been there or thereabouts this season, but he didn't get a lot of game time. So maybe if he does have a good half season at Rotherham, he could be a player that could come back in. Now, in addition to Dawson, Randolph and Coventry leaving, we've had a number of development players leaving. Of course, the biggest upset has been Harrison Ashby, who's moved to Newcastle. There was Pierre Ekwa, who moved to Sunderland, Will Greenidge, who's moved to Colchester United. And in the dying minutes of the transfer window last night, we lost Emmanuel Ongello to a permanent switch to Birmingham. He was on loan there, and that's been made a permanent switch. Now, many of you will say it doesn't matter how many development players go. They don't get a chance anyway in David Moyes' team. They would never have been given any game time. And to be honest, a lot of you are probably right. But some of these players would not have got any senior game time because, alas, they probably weren't good enough as much as no availability in the team. I think the only one that maybe people are really upset about is Harrison Ashby. We know that he was a good player, or he will be a good player. But there are so many sides of the story to Ashby. And depending on what you want to hear, some people are saying that his head was turned in the summer because Newcastle came in for him, but we refused to sell him. Other people saying that because of that, he wasn't putting himself available for first team football. He was injured quite a lot until he got his move. Who knows? But anyway, of all those players that have left in the academy, Ashby is probably the only one that would have got any game time at West Ham United this season. So all eyes are on some of our other development players. There's Levi Lang, central defender. There's Joseph Anang, who I've mentioned, who's now our third choice keeper. And of course, there's Divine Mbama, who's already got a little bit of a sniff of game time in the first team. Will he be given more game time throughout the season? I guess we'll see. I guess if it's the right time, the right place, just like he got 15 minutes against Derby, it will happen. So back to the transfer window. Whilst teams around us in the bottom half of the league were strengthening their squads, the only bit of business we did was to bring in 30-year-old striker Danny Ings and 20-year-old centre-back Luizão from Brazil. Now, Luizão's gone straight to the development squad, as we know, and he's playing for the under-21s. And unfortunately, Danny Ings has gone straight to the treatment room. Look, I'll be really honest with you. With regards to Danny Ings, I get the signing. I understand it. Loads of Premier League experience, natural goal scorer, good movement on and off the ball. He knows how to drag players out of position, creating space, etc., etc. We all know that. We all know his strengths. So it was understandable to get a player like him in, given that we haven't been scoring a lot of goals this season. But I know a lot of fans are unhappy with this, and they would have liked to have seen someone a bit younger. However, Luizão, as I've said, will he be one for next season? He certainly isn't going to be a player for this season, but would he be able to forge a place in the senior squad next season and fill one of the gaps that we've lost? There is an awful lot of other paper talk about players leaving as well. Apparently, there was at Lorient, the French team, were interested in Areola, but we received no bid for him. Ben Johnson, there was interest from Everton, apparently, but no bid for him either. Gianluca Scamacca was apparently going to go back to Italy, but no bid for him either. And Antonio, no bid was made by Chelsea, Wolves, or Everton, or any other club for him. Now, look, his future might be a bit different, but he's a West Ham player for the remainder of this season. And finally, Thilo Kehrer, although I know a lot of fans will probably wish there was a bid, there were no bids for him either to leave in this window. And of course, we had to continue hearing the diatribe about Declan Rice going to Arsenal, keeping his word that he's going to go to Arsenal, etc., etc. And even now the transfer window's shut, we won't hear the last of that. We've had Declan Rice stories for the last 3 years, every day, regardless of transfer windows or not. Look, the reality is, apart from Dawson and Randolph, no bid was made for any of our players in the senior squad. Dawson, as I said, we knew he wanted to leave, and Randolph, he would have been at the end of his contract at the end of this season, and by going to Bournemouth, he's had an 18-month contract offered. Now, ironically, we were apparently in for Terem Moffi of Lorient, but it seems like we never put a bid in for him. We inquired. We made an inquiry about his availability, what he would cost, etc. But no bid was put in for him. Look, on paper, we have a squad that's good enough not to go down. And I know I don't really want to say that because it's almost tempting fate. But we do have a squad that's good enough not to go down. In fact, on paper, we have a squad, ideally, that should be enough to be challenging at the top. Not in the top 4, but certainly a European place, rather than fighting relegation. And amongst many things, one of the contributors to our poor season so far has been the number of injuries that we've picked up. The warning signs were there in pre-season. In fact, it's deja vu. The warning signs were there this time last year when the 2022 January window opened. We had Ogbonna injured. Zuma was in and out of the team because of injury. And the same kind of happened this season as well. As we know, we lost Naifa Gerd before a ball was kicked in the Premier League or any competition. We lost him for 21 of the 32 games in all competitions so far this season. We lost Kurt Zuma twice, just like last season. This season, he's missed 7 games so far. He's likely to miss a few more. Gianluca Scamacca has missed 6 games and counting already. Maxwell Cornet, 20 games and counting, and we're still not sure whether whether he'll return to the first team, despite reporting back to Rush Green on Monday. And of course, as mentioned, no sooner did we sign Danny Ings than we lost him to injury as well. Now, from what we understand, with Zuma and potentially Cornet aside, Scamacca and Ings should be back in action very soon. In defence, despite all the injuries, we're actually 5th in the league for having conceded the fewest goals this season, with only 25 goals conceded. So if we look at the top of the board for that, Newcastle are there with only 11 goals conceded, Arsenal 16, Man City 20, Chelsea 21, and West Ham 25. Considering the injuries we've had, that's not really that bad. And look at the teams above us. 3 of those teams are in the top 4. Now, what about the bottom half, though? There are teams that are really struggling when it comes to their defence. Bournemouth have conceded 42 goals so far this season. Leicester and Southampton 35, Nottingham Forest 34, and Leeds United 33. So even though we are 5th best in terms of conceding goals, we're not scoring enough. And that's been the problem. And that goes back to Danny Ings. And I understand why David Moyes wanted to bring in an experienced striker in order to hit the ground running. Well, not hit the ground and then go out injured, I guess. I look at our defence, and it reminds me of last season how we kept losing defenders to injuries. I've already said this, and we had to kept having to put makeshift defences out in order to make do. After having spent 160 million pounds in the transfer market in the summer, I was hoping we shouldn't have had to do this again, but it looks like we probably will. We know that we got 3 central defenders that are injury prone. We know he's a fantastic defender, but he's got glass ankles. We know Ogbonna at the age of 34, he's pulling up trees at the moment. He's doing superb, but he can get an injury. And as we know, Zuma is out injured at the moment as well. So there are players that will come in, like Creswell, Kehrer, Ben Johnson, etc., in order to put in makeshift central defences if we need to. On top of the injury concerns, players like Soufal, Johnson, Kehrer, Creswell have either been they've not been in good form, or they've not been in consistent form this season. So we are living on a bit of a wing and a prayer with our defence. Now, look, I don't have the same concerns with our midfield. We have plenty of very good footballers who are able to fill in and do a job there. We've got Lanzini, Paqueta, Downs, Souček, Declan Rice. We've got a number of players that can fill in central midfield. And then in attack, and I know we've got Cornet and Scamacca and Ings out injured at the moment, but we still have Antonio, Bowen, Benrahma, and of course, young Divine Mbama. I'm going to go out on a limb and suggest that we should be fine in midfield and in attack. And it's still my concern that it's defence that concerns me more. I think our goal scoring will return. And if we continue to keep it tight at the back, then we should not be facing relegation come the end of this season. So for me, in summary, the January window should have been an opportunity for Moyes to not only add to the squad for what we need this season, but also to look ahead for next season. And it should have been an opportunity for us to look at who's going to be leaving in the summertime and bringing in 1 or 2 players to look at sort of replacing them and giving them that 6 months to be in and around the squad and be ready for the new season ahead. We have still a number of players that are looking likely to leave at the end of this season. All these players are currently out, will be out of contract in June. Soufal, Lanzini, Fabianski, Creswell. Bit of a question mark over him because I thought he had his contract extended, and then Ogbonna. Now, 4 of the 5 of these have got clauses in their contracts where we can extend their stay at West Ham. I think Soufal's got a 1 or 2 year extension clause. I think Lanzini's got 2 years. Fabianski's got a year, and Creswell's got a year. Whether we actually extend all their contracts or not, I don't know. But the other problem is, of course, is the aging squad. We now have the oldest squad, despite bringing in a number of young players in the summer window. We do now have the oldest squad in the average age squad in the league. And of course, there are other players that are likely to leave on top of these 5. Declan Rice, as we all know, is almost definitely going to leave in the summer, as well as Antonio, who's been talking an awful lot about moving on. So that means we're going to probably have to bring in something like another 7 players this summer. It doesn't matter who the manager's going to be, whether Moyes stays or whoever else is going to be here. They're going to have another rebuilding job to do, and also the task of bringing the average age of the squad down as well. Have we missed an opportunity? I think in terms of surviving in the Premier League, I think we'll be okay. It's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be pleasant. I think we will just about do it. But in terms of the squad itself, yes, I think we have missed another opportunity to look at strengthening, not just for the now, but for the future as well. If you're new to the channel, please do hit the subscribe and like button and the bell notification to let you know when I'm next on. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you all very soon.